Here we go on College Football Now by Chat Sports. Harrison Graham and Tyler Jones with you. And Tyler, 2 weeks left to go in the college football regular season before, of course, Championship Saturday. So I think we got, 3-4 batches of these to go from the College Football Playoff Committee. That's why we're here tonight to unveil the latest top 25 rankings from the CFP committee. What we'll do here is we'll get you our mock rankings, what we think the committee is going to do tonight. Talk about some college football rumors, some coaching hot board updates, what's going on at Texas A&M. Is Chip Kelly going to get fired? But Tyler, should be an interesting night. There could be some shuffling, even though the top 5 remain unbeaten here.
Yeah, it's been a crazy week in college football with all the changes. Obviously, we'll talk about Jimbo Fisher and that Texas A&M situation coming up later, but I think the ongoing theme so far throughout 2023 in the college football season has been parity. 1 through 5 of those unbeatens, there's not a whole lot of separation. You could make a case for any of those 5 to be the top team in America.
Yeah, we'll see what the committee does tonight. Let's get the live chat going here. Shout out your favorite college football team. Rep your squad in the chat. We got 140 people watching here on Chat Sports. Let's see. We got Doug is an Ohio State fan. Tony's rolling with Florida State. I'm obviously repping Georgia from Georgia Kid. We got you, Georgia Kid. Keegan going with Alabama. Eric going Colorado. Junior is a Bama fan. Nacho going with the Buckeyes. We got Mr. Mad repping Boomer Sooner.
Junior's a Bama and Patriots fan. That might be criminal.
Yeah, must be nice. Although not so much for the Patriots these days. But hey, listen, those 6 Super Bowl rings, I think you're okay there.
Right.
Reaper, Ohio State. Mo saying Oregon. OHIO from Epic. We got Chase going with Florida State. William, Ohio State. Nathaniel rocking with the Georgia Bulldogs. Allen Jackson, Bama. That just seems fitting there, although it's Allen spelled with 2 L's and an E.
The real Allen Jackson.
Well, the real Allen Jackson, please stand up. Kevin Kelly, Washington. Just Jackson, go Ducks. Ryan saying,
Oklahoma.
Where the wind
comes sweeping down the plain.
Chicago sports fan, Clemson. Ohio State from Tyler. See Bama saying win, Alabama win. Well, they've been doing a lot of that recently, and so has the entire top 5 as they just keep plugging away, Tyler. Last year.
Where's the red?
Yeah, exactly. One of these, there will be a red line eventually when Michigan and Ohio State play each other. But the top 5 just keeps plugging away, Tyler. Ohio State handling Michigan State 38-3 this week. Marvin Harrison Jr., a couple of touchdowns in that one. Georgia just dropping the hammer on Ole Miss. We'll talk about if that could be enough to jump them to number 1. Michigan, methodical, 0 pass attempts from J.J. McCarthy in the second half of that one against Penn State. I think they ran it 32 times in a row to win 24-15. Florida State, they kind of just keep dragging around, but they're unbeaten. They beat Miami 27-20, and then Washington picks up another ranked win. They took down Utah 35-28. Most of the scoring in that game was in the first half, more defense in the second half. So top 5 remain unbeaten. I will say this, Tyler. I do think the committee feels like there's a separation between the top 3 and 4 and 5. Like,
agreed.
I don't think Florida State's going to jump to number 1 or 2 tonight or something like that. So we'll ask the audience and get our thoughts as well. Who should be number 1? You sticking with Ohio State, or did Georgia do enough against the top 10 opponent in Ole Miss to leapfrog the Bulldogs to that top selection?
Well, I think that from what we've seen, the committee is more resume-based this year than we've seen maybe in years previously than the eye test. Georgia might be the better team, but I think that Ohio State is still going to be riding that non-conference win against Notre Dame. I don't expect the top 3 to change. You and I talked about last week, maybe this is the week Washington leapfrogs Florida State potentially for the number 4 spot, but I think that top 3 is going to stay the same: Ohio State, Georgia, and Michigan.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to play out. We'll get some shout-outs. I've got my mock rankings we're going to get to, and we'll see if I had any shuffling near the top. But Zach's going with Georgia. Just Jackson saying the Ducks, Oregon. Well, they could get their rematch with Washington. Kyrie going Ohio State. Mr. Mad, it's not Oklahoma. They've dropped a couple recently. Kyrie, Ohio State. Islander, Ohio State. Tony, Ohio State. Mr. Mad, he's all in on OU here. Rush says Michigan. Go Warriors in the chat. Hey, go check out our Golden State Warriors channel, Drive to Emperor, youtube.com/WarriorsTV. doing some content over there. Lore says Georgia, Ryan DeKing going with the Bulldogs as well. I don't want to unveil my rankings yet, but I'll just say this, Tyler. I would not be surprised if Georgia leapfrogged Ohio State tonight. More on that in a minute, but I do want to talk about our sponsor here on today's show. That is Prize Picks, the best daily fantasy sports app in the game. Daily fantasy made easy. Tyler and I are playing on a daily basis. The NBA is in full force. College basketball is back. So not only do you have the option to play on college football Saturdays, NFL Sundays, you can play on a daily basis with basketball and hockey fully underway. The way Prize Picks works is very simple. You select 2 to 6 players on any given entry and pick more or less than their stat projections from Prize Picks, and that's it. The more players you have in an entry, the more money you can make on a given entry. For example, here's an NFL 3-player entry I've got for this weekend. I like more on the receiving yards for CeeDee Lamb, 88.5 receiving yards. He's gone for 150 plus the past 3 weeks. That's going to slow down eventually, but Carolina's terrible. I could see him getting 100 yards in the first half and then Dallas kind of slowing it down, so I like that. Give me the less on Calvin Ridley for the Jags. He's kind of been phased out of their offense recently. 53.5 is very high for what he's been doing recently. And then Bryce Young and the Panthers have been struggling. 210.5 against that Dallas defense. I like the less there. 10 to win, 50 on this one. You can win up to 25 times your money with a 6-player entry from Prize Picks. And don't just join because Tyler and I are playing. How about rapper Meek Mill, comedian Andrew Schultz, and other celebrities playing Prize Picks on a daily basis? Check it out right now, prizepicks.com/CLNS. Our code CLNS is going to get you a deposit match when you sign up to $100. So you put down $50 when you sign up, they'll give you 50, up to 100. They're going to match that for you. Tyler and I love playing Prize Picks. You guys will as well.
I mean, you had me sold on Meek Mill.
Yeah, and listen, Meek Mill, he's the OG for a reason. PrizePicks.com/CLNS. That code CLNS. Link is in the live chat. Go check it out. Okay, so we're separating the top 3 and 4 and 5 right now, Tyler. Who do you think the better team is? Not necessarily who should be ranked higher. These two teams, Florida State and Washington, they play on a neutral field tomorrow. Who you picking to win?
I'd go with Washington to win. I think Michael Penix is a better quarterback than Jordan Travis, quite frankly. That Washington team, I feel, is more well-rounded, but Oregon might be even better than both these teams, quite frankly. I know that Oregon lost to Washington on the road, but that team's played really well the last couple of weeks. We're probably getting a rematch here in the Pac-12 title game.
Yeah, I think based on how the teams have played recently, and neither's played flawless, I think I would give Washington the slight edge. I think Penix is slightly more reliable than Jordan Travis, but he's obviously a good quarterback as well. I'll tell you what, if they play, take the over. I mean,
yes.
that's the points galore if these two teams. I'd love to see it. Now, I don't know if there's a scenario where these two teams would play in a semifinal game because I don't think either of these two teams is getting to number 1, and I don't know if enough chaos would happen where it would be the 2-3 matchup, but I think that would be a hell of a matchup if it did happen.
I would say this too, Harry, that both these teams have the same problem in that they play really well against their level competition, but play down to their opponents. We've seen that time and time again, even recently with both these teams.
Yeah, that's definitely a valid point there. Tony rocking with Florida State, Camel going Florida State. Just Jackson says both are worse than Oregon, which is a point Tyler made. I do agree that since that Washington-Oregon game, Oregon has looked more the part. But head-to-head matters, and we could get a rematch there, which could determine a playoff spot. Which brings us to this discussion, Tyler. We're unveiling the college football playoff map for the first time this year. Wanted to let a few weeks go by and kind of let some dominoes fall. And I think this is where we sit. I think 9 teams are still alive for the 4 college football playoff spots. And I think it's pretty simple. And you guys in the chat, Tyler, feel free to disagree, agree, whatever. I think 5 teams control their destiny, the unbeaten teams, because obviously Michigan, Ohio State will play each other. So the loser, that would be out. If the rest of them went out, I think that's your top 4. I think that's pretty cut and dry. On the bubble / win, and you're in a good position if you win out, I would say. I think they're almost on the right side of the bubble, but would need a little help. Oregon, Bama, and Texas. So let's just go through each of those. Oregon wins out. They rematch Washington, beat them. In a sense, they almost just replace Washington in the control your destiny. Now, the one scenario, though, is what if Bama beats Georgia and then they have to choose from two of those three teams, right? Like the winner of Oregon, Washington, and then Bama and Georgia. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like one of those teams could get left out.
And where it gets messy, too, is historically speaking, you would say you can't have a college football playoff without the SEC champion, but
it's possible this year.
Anyone that's been watching college football this year knows that although the Pac-12 is about to die, they've been the best conference in America. So can you leave a Pac-12 champion Oregon out for Alabama?
Well, here's where it gets murky as well. The Big 12 beyond Texas, and even Texas to an extent with the eye test recently, has not played great.
Right.
If Texas wins out, they're not going to add some huge signature win the rest of the way. There's no other top 10 team in the Big 12. But if Bama beats Georgia, I don't think you can put both of those teams in the playoff and leave out a one-loss Texas, because Texas will have beaten Alabama, then who would have beaten Georgia. So, like, in that scenario, it's like, okay, there's no possible way you could put both Bama and Georgia in and leave Texas out. The question is, could you go Bama or would you go Bama over Texas despite the head-to-head if it came down to those two for the final spot?
I can't personally do that. We play head-to-head games for a reason.
Yeah.
Texas went into Tuscaloosa. I don't care if it was week 3. Head-to-head should matter at some point. What was even the point of playing that game if Texas can't get in over Alabama when they beat them on the road? It wasn't like that it was a home game. Yeah. On the road, head-to-head has to have some value.
10-point margin of victory.
I could not personally take Alabama over Texas.
Yeah.
It's got to mean something.
Yeah, I just think, look, I hope a crazy scenario happens, because every year we talk about them and the committee's always bailed out. It ends up being pretty obvious usually. There's been a few exceptions. I want this the last year of the 4-team playoff. I want chaos. I want to go into Selection Sunday and them to have to debate through about 6 teams. Like, it would be fitting if the first year they had to do that and the last year they had to do that, because there are numerous scenarios where that could come into play. And by the way, it is a long shot. What if Louisville wins out and beats Florida State in the ACC championship?
And they beat Notre Dame.
They beat Notre Dame. So, like, I think it's possible that they're in the conversation at that point.
Yeah, that's the long shot at this point, really what could make things up. So we'll see what happens. If you love college football, hit that like button. It's a great night. We got Champions Classic going on, waiting for these playoff rankings to come in, down to the wire for the last few weeks of the college football regular season. Like the video if you're having a great time hanging out with us. Love college football here. No place we'd rather be than right here on College Football Now on a Tuesday night. He's Harrison Graham. I'm Tyler Jones, and we're about 35 minutes away from these rankings. That's what we're estimating based on how this Duke-Michigan State game finishes, Harry.
Yeah, we should mention that. So every year, one of the ranking revelations from the committee is a little bit later. This week is that week because they have the College Basketball Champions Classic doubleheader. Duke-Michigan State going on right now, 44-35 with about 13 minutes left to go in that one. The nightcap is Tyler's Kansas Jayhawks taking on the Kentucky Wildcats, and in between the games is when the committee will unveil their ranking. So that 34 minutes and change, that's an estimate right now. It's roughly going to be around 8 o'clock Central Time, 9 o'clock on the East Coast, but we'll adjust, we'll adapt. I think last year the first game went into overtime, so it ended up being way later. But
we're hoping this game stays as served.
Yeah,
keep the night moving.
Yeah, Duke, listen, take care of Michigan State. That would be lovely, and we will go from there. But in the meantime, as we await, and we'll keep tabs on this game as well, especially if it gets tight as we go. Let's go through our mock top 25 rankings. Tyler, I almost left them out, but my goodness, Oklahoma State, we gave you so much love last week for turning the season around. You win the final bedlam, at least in Big 12 play. Mike Gundy, arguably the best coaching job he's had. He lost to South Alabama. Then they won a bunch of games in a row. 45-3 drubbing at Central Florida. I think they plummet to 25. I wouldn't be shocked if they were unranked. Kansas drops a few spots. They should be ranked still, though. Kansas State slides up a bit. North Carolina, I think Tennessee's a big dropper as well. They were 13th last week. They got smoked by Missouri this past weekend.
Yeah, and we're going to see Kansas and Kansas State play this week. Producer Brett big Kansas fan. Can't wait to see Kansas win.
Hey, I've got a mic too.
Yeah, Tyler, so for those who don't know, sarcasm from Tyler, he's the Jayhawk. Producer Brett, Kansas State fan. So probably the most, at least anticipated Kansas State matchup in quite a while, I would say.
And it sounds like Jason Bean is likely coming back this week after he got injured in that loss to Texas Tech
By the way,
week.
what are they doing with Jalen Daniels? Is he?
I think he's taking a medical red shirt.
Okay,
that's what it seems like. And then might play his hand in the portal, potentially speaking.
We'll see what happens.
Ask Tyler how many years it's been.
How many years has it been since the Jayhawks have beaten the Wildcats?
Too many.
Todd Reesing,
Too many.
Was he the last quarterback to beat Kansas State?
Yes.
Yeah, Todd Reesing was a real one. He was a real one.
He was.
Keep it rolling here. 20-16. Tulane, they seem to have the inside track for a second straight year to represent the group of 5. Their only loss was a tight game to Ole Miss without their starting quarterback. So if they keep winning, they'll be in a good spot. Utah at 19. I mean, they played Washington without a touchdown. I don't see them dropping more than a spot or two. My least favorite program in college football, the Iowa Hawkeyes, 8-2. I tweeted this out, Tyler. They were beating Rutgers 6-0 after 3 quarters on Saturday. They ended up winning 22-0.
I made the mistake of betting the over in that game.
Big mistake. You should always go the under with Iowa. I tweeted out the screenshot of the score through 3 quarters. I said, I don't care what anybody says. This is not football. Anyone in the chat, if you're an Iowa fan, Big Ten, I don't care. That is not football, but they are 8-2. Arizona, who just keeps on winning, Tyler, up to 17. And then I got Notre Dame up at 16 there.
I believe, correct me if I'm wrong on this, in your mock rankings, Arizona and Utah are ahead of any current Big 12 or future Big 12 member. The Pac-12 teams coming over have the edge on the team staying.
Running the conference
yes.
from day one.
Arizona going to run the Big 12.
That's what they're saying. Yeah, exactly. Subscribe to the channel, college football news, rumors. We cover the NFL and NBA as well. And I will say this, our college football content's really increasing. We dropped a Texas A&M coaching hot board this week, Jimbo Fisher replacements. Go check that out. We're going to dive into some college football rumors here in a little bit as well. We cover the NFL, we cover the NBA, but our college content is increasing in the month of November with some of these big programs making coaching changes. We'll have recruiting stuff next month as well. So subscribe today. We're here every Tuesday night breaking down these rankings on a weekly basis. All right, let's jump into the top 15. Tyler, obviously Ole Miss, they're going to drop after losing to Georgia. It's hard to figure out the order of all this stuff, but these teams are obviously at this point more so just jockeying for New Year's Six positioning. They're not a factor in the college football playoff.
Yeah, pretty much everybody on this list has been exposed to an extent. Credit to Oregon State, though. I keep mentioning every week. Jonathan Smith,
Great
that
coach.
Program does not know what their future holds in the Pac-2, and here they are, the 11th best team in the country, a historic season for the Beavs. Incredible job in these circumstances.
And by the way, if you're Texas A&M, if you don't want to do the splashy headline play, go hire Jonathan Smith. The guy just knows how to win, man. What he's done at Oregon State, if I'm A&M, that's a guy who's going to come in, put his head down, go to work, and he's done a good job in the transfer portal as well. I think that would be a good hire for the Aggies. Top 10 here, Mizzou. I think they're the most impressive 2-loss team, Tyler. They just smoked Tennessee.
They
over
might be the
weekend.
most improved team in college football this year.
Yeah, I think Eli Drinkwitz and our next team here, Louisville, Jeff Brom, who their head coach. I think these are 2 very legitimate Coach of the Year candidates in college football.
Absolutely. Jeff Brom's done an incredible job, and here they are. They find themselves in the thick of the playoff hunt still with a shot.
Yeah, they're definitely on the outside looking in, but have an opportunity if they win out, beat Florida State, and get some help. Texas, you're gonna probably disagree with this, and I'm not saying I would do this. Again, I'm thinking what the committee will do.
You're projecting what the committee will do.
I think Bama jumps Texas this week, and here's why. Texas in 3 of the last 4 weeks has been up 20-plus points and has won by single digits late. Alabama has been killing people. Jalen Milroe all of a sudden looks like a legitimate college quarterback. He's played really well. Don't be surprised if they flip Alabama and Texas tonight. That's all I'm going to say.
And I'll say this much. Because of what you mentioned of the schedules ahead for Alabama and Texas each, if Alabama ever jumps Texas, They're not giving that spot back up.
Yeah, because Texas will not have an opponent anywhere close to Georgia, obviously.
The only way Texas gets back is if Alabama loses again.
Yeah, and look, if you're Texas, I think that's what you need. Like, you've wanted Bama to win up to this point, and you do, but you want them to lose to Georgia in the SEC championship because I think winning that game could leapfrog, if not sooner, which is what I have this week. Who do you guys think is the best one-loss team? I'm keeping Oregon at 6. That's where the committee's had them, so little teaser there. Oregon, Texas, or Alabama? Tyler can get some shout-outs going in a second in the chat. I think Oregon has looked the part most consistently, Tyler, but resume-wise, you could argue Texas, with that win over Alabama, should be the highest ranked. So, again, we've talked about this consistently with this committee. It's very much eye test versus resume this year. It's very tough to navigate for this committee.
Yeah, it is. And they play by different rules every week, it seems.
With different teams.
Yes, exactly. I think Oregon is the best one-loss team based on my eyes, but I wear 4 eyes, so who knows what my eyes think anyway. But Oregon, I think, is ascending. Bo Nix is probably the Heisman favorite at this point.
Yeah.
They would be the team I think is the best one-loss team, and I think that they're ultimately going to win the Pac-12. But Texas, the resume's there. You can't deny the win against Texas. Some shout-outs. Who do you guys think? Best one-loss team in America. Just Jackson says Oregon. Tony says Texas. Joel says Alabama. Let's see. We got JG says Oregon. Georgia Kid says it's a tie between Oregon and Alabama. No ties, Georgia Kid. Come on now. Tony saying Texas. Chai Day says Texas beat them head-to-head. Quick update on Duke and Michigan State in the Champions Classic. Waiting on that game to finish. Once it concludes, we'll have the latest college football playoff rankings as the Blue Devils lead Michigan State 51-40. Michigan State last week lost a heartbreaker to James Madison at home. And
the year of JMU.
Sparty might
stand
have
up.
2 losses to begin 2023 when it's all said and done.
Yeah, about midway through the second half. So, 20, 30 minutes. We'll see if that wraps up. If it gets tight late, you know how that goes. A lot of timeouts. So as soon as that game ends, the committee will release their rankings, and we'll react to them here on College Football Now. Let's get to our projected top 6 here. I don't think anything's changing at 6. I think Oregon holds firm there as the highest-ranked one-loss team. I don't think anything happened over the weekend that would drastically change that. Now, I am going to flip 4 and 5. I did it last week, and they didn't do it. I think it does happen this week. I think Washington with a top 20 win over Utah, where Florida State only beat Miami by a touchdown. Miami's not bad. They're a 6-win team. But this committee has valued the Pac-12 all year long. I think Washington picking up another ranked win against the Pac-12 opponent will have them leapfrog Florida State. I think the Huskies jump into that number 4 spot. And you guys let us know in the chat who you think the better team is. Do you agree with me on that? Do you think they leapfrog Florida State this week?
I think so. And one point I would add, too, as far as when you talk about strength of schedule and all that, Florida State, of course, has been hanging on to that win with LSU. Washington, it's not their fault that Michigan State was awful this year. They put in the effort to schedule that non-conference game and had a big win there. And so I think that's got to be recognized as well, that it wasn't a cupcake attempt, at least on their part.
Yeah, they didn't play, Eastern Washington or whatever. They did play a Power 5 opponent. So Florida State 5, Washington 4. I'm seeing a lot of FSU, some Washingtons in the chat. Continue to let us know. I just don't think Michigan's win over Penn State. Now, let me clarify things. It's a really good win. It's a win on the road against a top 10, top 15
without your head coach.
Team. No Jim Harbaugh. We'll see if the committee values that more or less or if that factors in at all. But I don't think it was so dominant that, A, they're going to leapfrog Ohio State, or B, even leapfrog Georgia, who just beat Ole Miss, a fellow top 10 team, by 35 points. Like, I just don't see that. So I'm keeping the Wolverines at 3. And, Tyler, I'm doing it. I'm flipping 1 and 2. I think the committee is going to value that 35-point win by Georgia over the weekend. And we've said it all year. Ohio State has a great resume, but neither you or I has thought, eye test-wise, they are on the level of Georgia or Michigan. I think it's close enough with Ohio State, with Michigan, that they'll stay ahead of Michigan because their resume is just that much better. And they play each other coming up, so that doesn't really matter. But I think with Georgia, Tyler, the last month or so, they've really ramped it up. And, I mean, that was just men amongst boys against the number 10 team in Ole Miss over the weekend. I think Georgia gets back to their number one spot, a place they've been very familiar the last couple of years.
And if you're a Georgia fan, what you have to feel really confident about is the emergence of Carson Beck over the last few weeks.
Played a lot better.
He did not look good to start out 2023. Now he's starting to come along and look the part of what Georgia's been looking for on that offense. Now the big question becomes, if they do lose to Alabama, are they still in or not? They're in good position right now. That question will come down the line.
What do you guys think? Who should be at number one? BB says Georgia, so does Zach. Elwall says Michigan, go blue. Let's see. Who should be at number one? Reaper says Ohio State. Jacob says Ohio State as well. Peanut says Alabama number 5. They're not getting to number 5 this week. Zach Nasty says Georgia. Jonathan says probably Georgia. I think you and I have said it all year. I mean, you could make an argument for any top 5 team unbeaten right now if you wanted to, but I think the committee has made it pretty clear that they've separated the top 3 from 4 and 5. I think it's between Georgia and Ohio State this week, and I think they'll go Georgia. I don't know for sure. I've had a pretty good feel for what they've done in the past, but it really could go either way. Tyler, you look at the upcoming slate here, some big matchups this weekend. Michigan on the road against Maryland, who's really been struggling after a good start to the year. That's big noon kickoff on Fox. Georgia at Tennessee. Can Tennessee bounce back and give Georgia a game? Do you see that being a possibility or probably not?
I don't trust Joe Milton.
Yeah.
That offense has had significant fall off from what they had with Hendon Hooker the year prior. I expect Georgia to win that, but it is a rivalry game.
It's on the
Tennessee
road.
at home, looking to bounce back. We'll see how that goes. Minnesota at Ohio State. Ohio State should be fine this week, I would think.
Yeah.
And then that Oregon-Arizona State game to me is more interesting than people may realize.
ASU's
That Arizona
they
State
played a lot
team,
better.
they have scared a lot of people. They are the best two-win football team I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, I think they're 3-7 now. They might have just gotten Chip Kelly fired. They just went into UCLA and beat him by 10 points and held
Kenny
them to 7
Dillingham,
points.
their head coach, came from Oregon as well, so he knows that scheme. Watch out there. Washington at Oregon State might be the best game in the country this week.
Yes.
That's going to be exciting, and primetime game there in Corvallis.
And if Oregon State can win that game, they're still alive to make the Pac-12 title game. So that's a significant game. All right, coming up next, we're going to get into the latest college football rumors. There's some Texas A&M buzz, and I just teased it. Chip Kelly, it looks like he could be on the way out. But, guys, we need more likes. Come on. We got almost 400 people watching. We're giving y'all a little discount. 100 likes is only about 25% of the way there, but we're shooting for 50% like rate. If we cross 100 likes, we will jump into the latest college football rumors. But until then, I'm going to sip my water, and
we're not doing anything until we get
Tyler
to
and I
100.
are just going to watch this Duke-Michigan State game until we get to 100 likes. So
we're waiting on you guys. We can do this all day.
yeah, listen, we'll hang out. If you guys don't want to hear the latest updates on Texas A&M and Quinn Ewers potentially going back to Texas, we'll chill here. We'll chill here. So hit that like button. We got what are we up to? 64 likes right now.
69. Nice.
69. Tom Downey is doing jumping jacks somewhere as we speak.
Tom
Junior
had
has
to be the
liked it.
69th like.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. Zach, ASU has 3 wins. Yeah, they picked up their 3rd this weekend. Could be huge contenders next year. I do think that's a sneaky team in the Big 12 next year, Arizona State. I think they're doing some good things over there. 25 likes away. Jerry says the Big 10 is a train wreck. Yeah, look, I'll say this right now, Tyler. The loser of Michigan State or Michigan-Ohio State, I think is out. Like, I just don't see an 11-1 non-Big 10 title championship game appearance team getting in. I mean, I know it happened last year, but it's different than last year. That's kind of been the beauty of the playoff. Every year it's a little bit different in terms of how many teams are still in the hunt.
We could have a situation where there are no one-loss teams in the playoff, where it's just undefeated.
Oh, it's very much a possibility. Winner of that game, and then Georgia, Washington, and Florida State run the table. It's that's never happened, right? The most we've had is 3.
Most we've had is 3.
So
we did have an undefeated UCF get left out and claim a Peach Bowl national title.
Yeah, exactly. Keep liking the video. What do we got? 8 minutes left, and of course, par for the course, Tyler. It is getting tight in the Champions Classic. The Fightin' Tom Izzos have cut it to 3. Michigan State on an 8-0 run, 51-48. Duke is about to go to the free throw line, it appears. But buckle up. This thing could drag out in this first game. So once that game ends, we will react to the latest college football playoff rankings. In the meantime, let's dive in to some college football rumors circulating the internet right now, some coaching situations, plus a key college quarterback potentially not going to the NFL draft. That's all coming up next here on College Football Now. He's Tyler Jones. I'm Harrison Graham. You are watching College Football Now by Chat Sports. A lot of rumors to dive into on today's show, including in a few minutes, a high-level coach getting fired, joining Jimbo Fisher, which is where we'll start here, the latest on Texas A&M and their coaching search. A lot of names have been linked to A&M's opening. There hasn't been any formal interviews that we know of up to this point, but a lot of buzz, a lot of chatter on what direction the Aggies could go into here, Tyler, after they did move on from Jimbo Fisher. But speaking of which, if you want a deep dive into a long list of candidates that could replace Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M, subscribe to the channel. We got you covered. We put out a list of candidates to keep in mind. We'll put out a new list probably in the coming weeks as well as more information comes out. But obviously, SEC adding Texas and Oklahoma, Tyler. A&M looking to get this hire right as the SEC is only going to get that much tougher.
A pivotal hire, and very important for you to watch this video as you'll be one step closer to $77 million.
Exactly. So go ahead and subscribe. Check that out. All right, let's get into the latest from College Station as you just made the point. Clearly they're taking this seriously if they're willing to buy out Jimbo for $77 million. I think I read his entire staff. When you add it all up, it's going to be more like $150 million. So a lot of interesting names being thrown out there. And we got to start with the juicy one, Tyler. Stephen A. Smith says, hire Deion, get him to College Station. And before you laugh, I actually don't think it's the craziest idea. Now, let's get to what Stephen A. had to say first, and then we can react. He said this on Get Up earlier this week. Deion Sanders in the SEC, with that vault that they have available to them hogs that he could recruit. He doesn't have them at Colorado, and he ain't going to get them, although he's gotten a few already. I don't think they'll do it. Texas A&M, prime time, Deion Sanders in the SEC, that needs to happen. And what's interesting here before you dismiss it is Deion has ties in the state of Texas. There's no doubt about it. He was a superstar for the Dallas Cowboys, and look, if there's one thing I think is obvious, whether we know how good of a coach he actually is, he can connect to players. He can convince players to come play for him. He's already doing it at Colorado. Texas A&M, he's going to have even more resources here, Tyler, and it's definitely interesting. Now, I do want to read Deion's response to the A&M buzz because, of course, every coach is being asked, what do you think about A&M? Well, he said, I want to win a game. You think I got time to sit down and think about that kind of stuff? Let's focus on this week. There is no chance Deion has at least not spent 5 minutes with this thought in his mind in the last 72 hours. I know he has.
But what is he supposed to say, though?
Exactly.
So I'll say this much. I think that wherever Deion ends up his next spot, we all expect him to go to Blue Blood next, but it's got to be somebody where he can be the face of the program. A place like Alabama, he could never be bigger than the face of Alabama.
Sure.
A place like Texas A&M, they're looking for an identity. That's where I could see potentially of why he might work there as opposed to some of these other blue bloods in college football.
Would you do it if you're A&M?
No, I would lean more towards the likes of Dan Lanning or Jonathan Smith or some of these others that have actually proven it. Deion, I think, has done a good job, and they've improved a lot, but still has more to go with that Colorado program before getting his next big job.
Yeah, and quite frankly, I think he wants to coach Shedeur and Travis Hunter one more year there, so I don't.
And his daughter's playing basketball there, too.
That's a good point. Speaking of Dan Lanning, which Tyler just mentioned, listen, coaches have never lied before. That's just a fact. Dan Lanning dismisses A&M when asked about it, which, again, what's he supposed to say? Here's what he had to say when asked about the A&M rumors. I think I've been really, really clear here since day one. I'm not going anywhere. There's zero chance. Don't put yourself in that hole, Dan. I would be coaching somewhere else. I've got unfinished business here, which I kind of like the last sentence. It's like, dude, you've been there a year and a half. What do you mean about unfinished business? But money talks, Tyler. And if A&M's willing to do what they did with Jimbo, with Dan Lanning, you're telling me there's no chance he would consider jumping back to the SEC where he was at Georgia? I don't think he's going to go. But the zero chance, like, that's how you paint yourself into a corner if you're Dan Lanning.
Well, when we talk about money talks, too, think about this. The last two head coaches at Oregon, Mario Cristobal and Willie Taggart, all left for other jobs. As we saw Cristobal go to Miami, we saw Taggart go to Florida State. So what's going to be different now? What is Oregon going to do to keep Dan Lanning that they weren't doing previously with their other two coaches here? We know that they have Phil Knight and the Nike money and all that, but it's time for Oregon to put their money where their mouth is. If they want to keep a great coach like Dan Lanning, then they need to pony up the money to do so.
Yeah, and look, they're going to get that Big Ten money coming in, obviously. It's going to be more than what they were getting in the Pac-12. If I'm Dan Lanning, I'm trying to parlay this into a raise from Oregon. Like, I'm staying there. I'm comfortable there. You're not in a situation where they're going to fire you anytime soon, whereas at A&M, if you're not winning probably in 3 or 4 years, you're gone. They just paid $150 million to get rid of Jimbo and his staff, or at least they're willing to pay that. So we'll see how it goes for Dan Lanning. Now, Dabo Swinney, which, by the way, let me just mention this. If A&M hired him, is that not just exactly what they just did with Jimbo? It's
the same thing.
It's like the exact same thing. National title coach, kind of losing his luster at the school he's currently at. We can fix him. We can make it work here. Well, Dabo was asked about the opening, because every coach in America is. Could he jump ship? I will say this, Tyler, from Dabo's standpoint, I don't think it's the worst idea. I said this about Jimbo at the time. If they're really going to offer you that contract, I'd consider doing it, because things were starting to slip at Florida State. Dabo had kind of taken control of the ACC. Well, now Dabo's kind of in the position where Jimbo was when he left, where the ACC doesn't run through Clemson anymore. They're kind of just another program right now. So in the midst of a bad season and a slow decline since winning those national championships, and we've talked about this, Tyler, his reluctance to NIL, the transfer portal, he might consider jumping ship if A&M actually gives him that opportunity.
I think it would be great for Dabo. It would be bad for Texas A&M
100% agree.
To go with a coach that is more behind, backward thinking than any other coach in America with NIL and the portal and everything like that. It would be a huge mistake on A&M's part. But if they offer him the bag, I think he'd be crazy to say no.
Yeah, and especially with the uncertainty about the ACC's future and the security of the SEC, I think if he gets the offer, he takes it. But if I'm with you, if I'm A&M, I'm not going down that road.
I know that Clemson wants out of the ACC. It's not a foregone conclusion that the SEC or the Big Ten's waiting for them either.
Yeah, it's a very good point. All right, speak your mind. Get involved in the comment section. Who should Texas A&M hire as their new head coach? Let Tyler and I know in the comments right now. All right, we continue the conversation in a minute. Could this major head coach get fired? We dive in, but first, we want to talk about our sponsor, Prize Picks, here on today's show, the best daily fantasy sports app out there. And listen, I play fantasy football, and most of my teams stink this year, which is why I've dove it in with both feet into Prize Picks, because I can play fantasy sports on a daily basis now. Because the way Prize Picks works is college football, NFL, college basketball. You can play all the sports, and you just do player entries of 2 to 6 players, and if they will go for more or less than their stat projections, it could be passing yards, rushing yards, projected fantasy points. They have combinations like 2-player ones on a single pick where it's like, well, Caleb Williams and Drake May go for more or less than 500 passing yards, all kinds of stuff. You check it out. I've got a 3-player entry for the NFL this weekend with CeeDee Lamb. He's been red hot. Give me the more than 88.5 receiving yards on him. Calvin Ridley's been struggling recently. He's been phased out of that Jacksonville offense in recent weeks. Less than 53.5 receiving yards. I also like the less on Bryce Young passing yards. That Carolina team is just a mess right now. $10 entry to win $50 if this 3-player pick entry hits. You can win up to 25 times your money if you hit on a 6-player entry. Go check out PrizePicks right now. It's prizepicks.com/CLNS. Our code CLNS. Get you a deposit match up to $100. If you put in $10 when you sign up, they'll give you $10. All the way up to $100, they'll match you up to $100. It's prizepicks.com/CLNS. Code CLNS. They also have a reboot policy. If you have football or basketball entries, if a player gets hurt in the first half, they will take that player out of your entry. So if you have a 4-player entry, player gets hurt, turns to a 3-player entry, they still want to give you a chance to win. No other daily fantasy sports app is going to do that. It's PrizePicks. PrizePicks.com/CLNS, code CLNS to get that deposit match. All right, let's talk about Chip Kelly, Tyler. I got to be honest, I did not see this coming. 24/7 Sports, the Bruin Report, reporting to here on Tuesday night, Wednesday if you're watching, that Chip Kelly is expected to get fired. I know they just had a bad loss at home to Arizona State, but they're 6-4. He's had to shuffle their quarterbacks. They were starting 5-star freshman Dante Moore earlier this year. He struggled a bit, so they had to make a change. It's not like this thing is completely unraveled for Chip, and they're just going to go in a new direction here. I'm a bit surprised. Let me read this quote or this snippet from the Bruin Report. They're reporting here, and then we'll react. It says UCLA will likely fire Chip Kelly after this weekend, but if the Bruins win against crosstown rival USC, he could remain through the end of the regular season. Oh, great. He gets to coach an extra game. It sounds like he's out. I mean, that's kind of surprising to me.
Yeah, I read an article the other day from the great Bill Plaschke talking about this situation, and basically UCLA fans are upset they were sold a bag of goods of this innovative offense, this great offensive mind that Chip Kelly is, and just really hasn't delivered to expectations. But the truth of the matter is this, that UCLA program, Harry, I know that they're going to the Big Ten and all the excitement about that, playing in the Rose Bowl and all, but the facilities around that program aren't great. The money around that program hasn't been that great either. UCLA is not the easiest place to win.
You watch these games, the Rose Bowl's half filled.
It's 2 hours away from their campus.
Yeah, it's just like, I mean, Chip Kelly's done a nice job there. I mean, last year, there were a couple of plays away from being in a Pac-12 championship game, and, like, you're having to start a freshman this year. I know they made a switch recently, but, like, you're going to lose Dante Moore if you fire Chip Kelly. Like, he's going to the portal. You can take that to the bank. So here's the feeling I get with a lot of these programs right now. You guys weigh in. Should UCLA fire Chip Kelly? Type F for fire, K for keep. I get the sense with a lot of these schools switching conferences, these athletic directors and these alumni bases are like, we feel like if we don't feel 100% about the current guy, we need to make a change before jumping into the Big Ten in this case, which I get that to an extent, but I agree with you. UCLA's not a football blue blood. Like, if I'm UCLA, I'm pretty content with being a consistent bowl team, but then every handful of years maybe competing for a conference title or something like that. I think Chip Kelly can do that for you. The grass is not always greener on the other side. Like, I don't know where UCLA turns to if you fire Chip Kelly.
Yeah, and I think part of it, too, has to do with exciting that fan base with the idea of if we make a change, do the fans buy in more with a new reset going into the Big Ten? Because even when they were competing for the Pac-12 last year, attendance was historically bad last year. So what do you guys think? F for fire, K for keep? Let us know.
Let's shift to one more story here that surfaced on Tuesday. Quinn Ewers, it sounds like he's leaning toward returning to Texas next season, which obviously a lot of implications there if he does. We'll talk about Arch Manning, Malik Murphy as we go. But there has been some conflicting reports, Tyler, about this story. Inside Texas, which is part of the On3 network, they say it's a 90% done deal. Pete Thamel kind of pushed back on that. We'll kind of run through the reporting here, but this is certainly an interesting discussion. Bobby Burton of Inside Texas said Ewers expected to return. Decision may have already been made, he says it's at least 90% right now. Now, Pete Thamel, Tyler, pushed back on that, basically said there's not been a decision. There has been early conversations about a potential return, but, quote, there's a long way to go. Thamel, I know for a fact, has a connection with Quinn Ewers' dad, so I'm guessing that's a potential quote from him there. Thamel also added this. Ewers has been viewed since high school as a 3-and-done. Technically, this is his 3rd year. But remember, Tyler, he enrolled early.
Right.
So in some senses, it's really supposed to be his 2nd year of college football. So interesting decisions ahead if you're Quinn Ewers, who obviously missed a couple of games with that shoulder injury, but I think has taken some good steps this year in improving as a college quarterback.
I think he has. The completion percentage went up considerably from where he was at last year, less than 60% this year to 70%. Touchdown to interception ratio much better as well. But even with that said, as far as the timing goes, what if Texas were to go on a run and they get to the college football playoff? Hell, they could even still win the national championship as far as we know. What would Quinn Ewers still have left to prove at that point? If he wins the national championship at Texas, there's no way he wouldn't be a first-round pick.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the okay, if it's at 80, 90% right now, if Texas makes the playoff and he shows out, he could drive his way up into the first round, and then at that point, you probably do go. But if the feedback he's getting right now is he's a day 2 guy, maybe the NFL evaluators are nervous about that shoulder that he's injured 2 years in a row.
And it's a loaded quarterback class.
And I think that's part of it too. There's no scenario where he's any higher than the 3rd quarterback in this class. Caleb Williams and Drake May will be the top 2 quarterbacks. The question, Tyler, before we wrap up this episode is, what happens with Malik Murphy and Arch Manning? Now, my prediction is Murphy's probably gone no matter what. I think he enters the portal regardless of what happens here. Does Arch Manning enter the portal, or does he ride this out as a backup for another season behind Quinn Ewers and then take over the reins in 2025? Obviously, those conversations with Steve Sarkisian would have to take place.
Right, and he went to Texas knowing this was a possibility that Quinn Ewers would come back after this season. But I would also have to think, where does the Manning family get involved? And we know for a fact that Tennessee is going to be looking for a quarterback next year.
Yep.
Ole Miss, he might be better than Jackson Dart. So he's going to have his options for Arch Manning. I would think that he comes back to Texas, but I don't think it's a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there. What do you guys think happens with Quinn Ewers, though? Will he go back to Texas next season? Is he going to return? Type Y for yes, he will. And for no, he's going to the NFL draft. 90% reporting, that feels high to me, but I've thought for a few weeks that he might come back, especially since suffering that injury, so it would not shock me. Y for yes and for no, let us know what you guys think, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We're just getting warmed up here on College Football Now. More and more videos and content in the coming weeks and next couple of months as well. Transfer portal coverage once the regular season ends as well. So don't miss out. Tyler, myself, and several others here at Chat Sports will keep you guys in the loop every single week. All right, we did get a super chat, and by the way, just quick update, Duke has pulled away again, up 10 with 1:20 to go, so should be getting those rankings in the next 5 to 10 minutes from the College Football Playoff Committee. Dylan Heck says, what if Urban goes to A&M back to the SEC? I'll say this, I've said for a while, I don't think Urban coaches again. I think A&M is on a list of about 4 programs in the country that might be desperate enough to do it. I'm being for real. If anyone's going to hire Urban Meyer, it might be Texas A&M.
Hiring Urban at this point almost feels like when Les Miles went to Kansas. He's won a national title. He's a Hall of Fame coach, but
he's way removed.
This is the end for Urban Meyer.
Yeah.
It's already hit at this point. He's an excellent analyst.
I was going to say, if you're Urban, it's dude, you're making a couple $100,000 a year, probably, if not more, from Fox. You work 15 hours a week, if that, play golf. But some of these guys are obsessed with it, man.
I would be surprised.
Yeah, I would too. It would have to be the Jimbo contract and then some, at least in terms of annual. Maybe not a 10-year deal with Urban being a little bit older.
I would even take it a step further that he's more likely to join his buddy Bob Stoops in the XFL than he is to take a big-time college job.
I could see that as well. We are just minutes away from the committee releasing their latest ranking. Shout out your favorite team as we await. We can also circle back to the college football playoff map in just a moment here as we kind of break down how this thing shakes out with a few weeks left to go until the final rankings. But let us know who your favorite team is. Zach says Arizona is the best team in Arizona. I would concur with that. Let's see. Roll Tide Roll from Corrido. Charles going with Ohio State. Go Dogs. Georgia from Georgia. We got Joe with Ohio State. Gaming Wizard, Florida State. We got Tyler saying go Dogs. Mizzou Tigers, great year for Missouri. They're in line to get to a New Year's Six game. Caden says Georgia. Vivid going with Michigan. Sko Ducks, Oregon from Jake. Roll Tide from Jello. We got Iowa from Rom. Rom, I apologize if you were with me on my Iowa rant earlier. I do not enjoy that brand of football, but they are 8-2. Go Michigan from Steve. I mean, be real with me. If you are not an Iowa football fan, there is no way you enjoy watching Iowa play.
It's painful.
It's brutal. It's like watching Virginia basketball, but worse. I mean, it is painful to watch.
At least Virginia's won a national title. Like Iowa, their best they've done is get to the Big Ten title game.
You're never winning a natty with Kirk Ferentz. Like he's just good enough that they'll never fire him. Like that, he has mastered that.
I want to live in a world where Brian Ferentz is OC and Alex Grinch is DC of the same team.
A junior college would not even consider that, I don't think. Go Blue from Steve, Roll Tide, and this game has slowed to a crawl. There was a TV timeout, minute 21 to go, 69-60, Duke on top. One more free throw here. Let's
69 points. Nice.
Yeah, nice. Let's take a look at the updated playoff map here. We've got a uptick in the audience. We're here every week. Be sure to subscribe as we break down these rankings. A little bit later this week because it is the College Basketball Champions Classic doubleheader. Once this first game ends, they will reveal the updated top 25. But Tyler and I discussed this earlier, and the way we see it is the top 5, all the unbeatens control their destiny. If they win out, they're in because the winner of Ohio State, Michigan would be in position. The loser would drop out. So in theory, if every other team wins out in that controls destiny category, you would have your top 4 there. Oregon, Bama, Texas knocking on the door. If they just get a little bit of help, if they win out, they'd be in good position. And then Louisville with just one loss, bad loss to Pitt. But if they could win out and beat Florida State, who's currently in the top 5, Tyler, they would need more chaos. But with just one loss, they're certainly not completely out of it.
Yeah, and there is a decent chance right now that we could end up where no one-loss teams make the playoff, where you have to be undefeated to get in at this point. I think it's a couple things to watch in the next few weeks. The SEC and Big Ten title games are going to be very pivotal.
Do you mean Big Ten title or Ohio State?
Or Ohio State, Michigan, rather.
That's the Big Ten title. Winner of that is in the playoff, barring something unforeseen.
Those games and then the Pac-12 title game as well are going to be kind of the movers and shakers here the next few weeks.
The biggest wild card to me in all this is if Bama wins out and beats Georgia in the SEC title. What happens? Because, regardless of other teams and what happens there's very real scenario where you're in this like domino game of Bama, Texas, Georgia. What do you do? You're also like if Oregon beats Washington, kind of similar, but not to the same level. I think Oregon would be in a good position to get in, but I don't think Oregon beating Washington would have them higher than Bama beating Georgia, if that makes sense. Like I know Oregon's been higher than Bama, but if Bama beats Georgia, I think one-loss Bama gets in over one-loss Oregon. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, I agree. And, typically when we've had these discussions over the years with the playoff, it's been, hey, the SEC champ is just going to be in the playoff no matter what, that you're going to find a way to get the SEC champion in. That isn't the case this year with them not being the best conference in America. That title belongs to the Pac-12. We are on pace to get to 345,000 subscribers here at Chat Sports, currently at 344,653, 347 more to go. Subscribe now. Join the channel for more college football content. Harry, we are certainly heating things up as we catch you down to the college football playoff. A lot of coaching hot boards.
Yep.
We're going to be having bowl projections soon. All sorts of great stuff over the next few weeks.
Transfer portal, top players that enter the portal. That's become a big part
National
of our
Signing Day being a month.
Content. Yeah, recruiting season. I mean, the next month really here is like college football central here at Chat Sports. So if you're a fan of college football, this is a sport you like following, this is the time to be involved here at Chat Sports. So subscribe. Quick update, 34 seconds. That fraud Tom Izzo keeps fouling despite being down 10 points. with under a minute to go. He's not a fraud. I like Tom Izzo, but at some point,
it's not March.
It's not March, Tom. Well, you'll get into the tournament as an 8 seed, and we'll see you in the Final Four. That's how this goes. But it's not going to happen tonight. 30 seconds left as Michigan State is now down 11, 74-63. Let us know who should be number 1 tonight: Ohio State, Georgia, or Michigan. The way the committee has operated so far, Tyler, these 3 have separated themselves, it would appear, among the top 5 unbeatens. We've had a debate. You're sticking with Ohio State. I'm cool either way. I projected Georgia leapfrog after their dominant win over Ole Miss, but I wouldn't be surprised either way to see who's on top. I do not think there's any scenario where Michigan gets the number 1 tonight.
No, and there shouldn't be any scenario where they get that. I think these 3 teams have separated themselves from the other 2 undefeateds with Florida State and Washington. I think that's the scenario we're looking at, but this will all sort itself out, with what we're about to see these games in the next couple of weeks. The Ohio State-Michigan game here soon, too. Let's give some shout-outs now. Who should be the number 1 team? Carlos says Georgia. Crispy says Bama. We got April says Ohio State. Samuel says Ohio State. Wayne says Georgia. Kenneth says Michigan. Deadeye says Michigan. Georgia Kid, shocker, says Georgia. Samuel says Ohio State. Pookie Turner says Ohio State. Jackson Ward says Georgia.
And if you're just joining us, if you're confused, why is there a basketball scoreboard on my screen? Well, this is the 1 week every year the college football playoff rankings come out. In between the college basketball doubleheader, the first game, Duke, Michigan State, under 20 seconds left, 17 ticks to be exact, 74-65. Once this game wraps up, the committee will unveil their rankings. We'll react with all of you. And then the second game is Kansas and Kentucky. We're not sticking around for that. But
to put it in a nutshell, we're being shadow banned from the rankings right now.
Exactly. We're being shadow banned. Usually it's at 6 o'clock Central every week, so be sure to subscribe and join us for that. This week it's 9 o'clock Eastern, 8 Central, or 15 after 8. It's usually around this time. So that is why we are waiting. We will get those rankings to you in just a moment. And while we wait, can we get 100 new likes before the reveal? We're at 130 likes. If we get to 230 before the reveal, that would be awesome. 330 would be 200 new likes. Let's make it happen. Duke is dribbling it out, so Tom Izzo has waved the white flag finally, but
Michigan State's second loss. They're out of the playoff now.
Yeah, it's over. You've been eliminated from the college football playoff. Different sport. Hit that like button if you love college football. Let's go. We have already picked up 65 new likes. Let's get to 250, and we would greatly, greatly appreciate that. We can also, real quick before the committee unveils theirs, we could show. We want to show the bracket, our projected top 6 here. We've got our projected top 6 here that we'll dive into. So like the video. Here we go. We should hear from the committee in just a moment. He is Tyler Jones. My name is Harrison Graham. We got 1,300 and change people watching live. Like the video. Hit the sub button for more content if you haven't already. The College Football Playoff Committee is going to unveil their latest top 25 rankings in a moment. Let's sprint through our mock rankings. We'll spend more time on the top 10, but 25 through 21, Tyler, a couple of notes here. Tennessee, Kansas, Oklahoma State all losing over the weekend. We expect them to drop. North Carolina, Kansas State did win, so they could move up a couple of spots. 16 through 20 here. I think the main note here, Tyler, is Tulane, the inside track, to be the Group of 5 nominee for a second straight year in the New Year's Six.
Yeah, Willie Fritz has done a really good job. How about Arizona joining the bunch there? What they've done with that program, big momentum for them as they head to the Big 12 next year.
I think they've won 5 games in a row. It's been really impressive. Top 15, you mentioned on a similar level, Oregon State with Jonathan Smith. I think they're one of the best 2-loss teams in the country. Penn State should drop a few spots after losing to Michigan. We'll see how they kind of handle Ole Miss after they got whacked by Georgia. This is kind of the range that's hard to figure out, but none of these teams really factoring into making the playoff. Neither is number 10 Missouri. They do have 2 losses, but do want to show them some love. I think they've got the best resume of any 2-loss team in the country. They played Georgia pretty tight. They've won some impressive games, just hammered Tennessee over the weekend. So they are in the mix. Before we get to our top 9, let's look at the college football playoff map, Tyler, because these 9 teams remaining all have 1 loss or less, which is why they are the only teams alive in our eyes to make that Final Four here in a few weeks.
Right, and you look at those teams on the bubble, they all have an interesting case. Oregon has probably looked the most impressive. Alabama has looked much improved from where they were at, but they've lost to Texas, who hasn't played that great as of late. So a lot to unfold and figure out here.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. It's simple on the left side of your screen. You win out, you're in. There's no scenario where an unbeaten Power 5 champion does not make the playoff, in my opinion. So Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, those two will play each other, obviously. Washington and Florida State. If you win out, you're going to make the college football playoff. Louisville is the long shot team here, Tyler, but opportunities ahead of them if they can win their final 2 games, beat Florida State in the ACC championship game. Hey,
not impossible.
Let it rip. There's been chaos before, so they're sitting there at number 9. I think Jeff Brom and, quite frankly, Eli Drinkwitz at Missouri, 2 top candidates to win Coach of the Year in college football. I'm flipping Bama and Texas this week again. I'm doing this based on what I think the committee will do. Yes, the head-to-head is there. I would not do this personally, but I think the committee will value how dominant Bama has been recently and how Texas has kind of been messing around. We know that game control and some of these metrics matter to the committee, how you're winning, not just winning itself, like eye test and all that stuff. I think Bama recently has looked better, so I think there's a real chance they flip that tonight.
Yeah, and if that does happen, that's going to turn some heads because we did see these 2 teams play. We saw Texas beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa by double digits. It shouldn't happen, but it wouldn't shock any of us if it does.
Oregon at number 6. I think they hold firm there as the top 1-loss team in the country. They've looked the part all year. Florida State, I'm going to flip them, and Washington as well. Another flip in the top 10 for me. Again, just basing what I think the committee will do. Washington beat a top 20 Utah team over the weekend. Florida State kind of skated by Miami, who's unranked. So I think Florida State 5, Washington 4. We'll show that in a second. But that leaves us with the top 3, Tyler. Who should be number 1? Ohio State, I still think, has the best resume, but Georgia's resume has tightened up, gotten closer, and they just absolutely have looked the part, especially the last few weeks. They hammered Ole Miss. I think we could see a change at the top. We'll see what happens here.
Yeah, I still think it's going to be Ohio State holding that number 1 spot. I think that win over Notre Dame was a big deal for them, but Georgia starting to get hot at the right time. Carson Beck is playing a lot better as of late. I wouldn't want to be playing Georgia right now.
Quick shout-outs here. Maddie says Georgia, Damian as well. Dylan says top 4 stays the same. I feel good about Washington jumping Florida State this week. I really do. I don't feel as confident about my switch at number 1, which we'll show in a second, but I feel good about Washington jumping Florida State. Michigan, I think they hold firm at number 3. Good win over Penn State, but they didn't even throw a pass in the second half. It's not like they pulled away from the Nittany Lions. I don't think it was impressive enough to have them leapfrog Georgia or Ohio State at this point in time. So I think they stay at number 3. Ohio State, I am going to flip 1 and 2. I'll go Buckeyes 2, Georgia 1. That non-conference win over Notre Dame is still going to carry weight, but it just feels like Georgia's flipped the switch. They just beat a top 10 team by 35 points as well, and it didn't feel that close. I think there could be a change. I'm not crazy confident in it, Tyler. Like, for example, I'm way more confident Washington and Florida State flip than Ohio State and Georgia flip, but I will project that the committee will make the flip, but it's very, very close. I could see it going either way.
Well, and I think there is something to be said about a team being back-to-back national champions.
Yep.
Of somebody still got to beat the best to take down
28
the best.
wins in a row or whatever it is now. It's 27 or 28. I firmly believe that prior season should not carry weight in the eyes of the committee. But you know it rattles back there somewhere, right? Like, no one's beaten this team in almost 3 years. Like, that's hard to ignore if you're on this 12-person committee. So that is where we sit right now. If you're ready for the rankings, spam me. Tyler and I are ready to go. The committee is about to unveil them any minute here, as we are just a few weeks away from the final ranking. So, Tyler, spam some shout-outs for us as we await for the committee.
Here we go, rapid fire. I got Braden, Orange, Walt, Rolando, Jr., Devin, Nolan, Jason, Corbin, Steve, Charlie, Infinity, Samuel, Corbin, Orange, Jason, Zach, Chris, Jason, Clip, Eric, Dylan, Dalton, Peter, Austin, Big Cheese, Potter, the incredible Zach, Clip. A lot of great people watching. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us as we're waiting the rankings out right now.
And here we go. I'll verbalize 25 through 21 as we get those on screen. Kansas drops 9 spots, but they are still ranked. They're number 25. Tulane at number 24. They drop a spot despite winning. That makes sense. Oklahoma State at 23. They plummet 8 spots. Utah, number 22. They drop 4 spots. Kansas State up 4 spots up to number 21. They're going quick tonight here. 16 through 20. North Carolina at number 20. Notre Dame at number 19. Tennessee at number 18, despite getting whacked. Arizona at 17. And then everyone's favorite college football program, the Iowa Hawkeyes, up to number 16.
Boo.
It's going to be disgusting when Iowa plays for a New Year's Six bowl game.
Oh.
It's going to be absolutely disgusting. All right, 15 through 11, follow along with me here. LSU at number 15, Oklahoma 14, Ole Miss 13, Penn State 12, Oregon 11. We almost nailed this section, but Penn State and Ole Miss 12 and 13. Oregon State at 11, excuse me, there. So we had the right 5 teams in this chunk, Tyler, but Penn State and Ole Miss flipped in our projections. So that is 11 through 15. The only thing that really stands out to me so far is why is Tulane dropping after winning a game?
What the hell did they do wrong?
This bias committee.
And their one loss was to that team ranked 13th, Ole Miss.
Did they drop because Ole Miss lost?
Is that the conspiracy here?
Who knows?
Here
we'll
we go.
Get to the top 10 here in just a moment. Louisville at number 10. So that means 2-loss Mizzou is going to be ahead of Louisville,
How
which
about that?
does not bode well for Louisville's long shot chances at making the playoff. Like, that's not a great sign if they can't even be ahead of Missouri. I get Mizzou just had a nice win against Tennessee. They do come in at number 9, but that's not great on that front. Louisville 10, Mizzou number 9 here. So this is where it gets interesting, Tyler. Oregon, Texas, Bama. How do they order those one-loss
They clearly like the SEC.
Well, that's always been the case. Nothing has ever been more true than
Who's
that.
the best one-loss team, Oregon, Texas, or Bama?
Spam the chat.
Spam it.
Represent. Oregon, Texas, Bama. Bama from Josh. Jello says Bama. So does Michael. A lot of Bamas coming in. Zach. Cloak's going with Oregon. Jeremy says Texas. Official says Oregon.
Seen a lot of Oregons in the chat.
Justin says Bama. We'll see who comes in at number 8. Oh, they are going to value head-to-head. Good for you, committee. Alabama.
Good job.
Coming in at number 8. I think that's proper. I think that's proper.
I feel like I'm cheering on officials right now.
Or if you want to go deep conspiracy, they're just pleading people until Bama beats Georgia, and then they jump Texas.
Oh, yes.
Because we know that's happening if that scenario plays out. All right, Bama 8, Mizzou 9, Louisville 10. Texas comes in at number 7.
And both those spots hold from last week.
Which means Oregon almost certainly will be number 6, which means 6 through 8 holds firm. So some consistency from the committee up to this point. This is the third batch of rankings this year. So let's recap 7 through 25 real quick. You see Texas at 7, Bama at 8, Mizzou at 9, Louisville at 10, Oregon State, Penn State, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, and LSU 11 through 15. Oregon State, Washington this weekend, big game in the Pac-12. Iowa number 16, Gross, Arizona 17, Tennessee, Notre Dame, North Carolina wrapping up the top 20. Kansas State, Utah, Oklahoma State, Tulane, and Kansas, 21 through 25. Subscribe to the channel. We got 2,300 people watching live. If you want more college football coverage, every Tuesday night, Tyler and I are here to break down the latest rankings. We put out a Texas A&M coaching hot board. Go check that out. We also cover the NFL and the NBA for those interested in those sports. Hit that sub button. We're closing in on 345,000 subscribers here on the channel. Help us get there. Let's get there tonight. I know not all 2,300 of you guys have
If you don't subscribe, you love the BCS.
Yes. If you don't subscribe, you love the BCS. I love that from Tyler Jones. Let's get it popping. Hit that subscribe button. Sub. You know what? I'm going sub-only chat. Type me if you have hit that subscribe button for a shout-out. and we will get those shout-outs going. If you type me and it doesn't come through, that means you are not subscribed. So spam me in the chat. We got Braden, Panda, Maddie, Jason, Nacho, Orangey, Hulo, great boy as well. Oregon coming in at number 6. It's typically gone 6-1 from the committee so far this year. The Ducks hold on to the highest-ranked one-loss team. You got to feel with how the committee likes them, Tyler. If they win out, they are going to be in the college football playoff more than likely. And I'm wrong again. I thought I had a feel for this. Not the last couple of weeks, Tyler. Washington at number 5. That surprises me.
Yeah, they seem to really like that win over LSU for Florida State.
Well, I mean, it fits into the we love the SEC theory there. So Washington 5, which almost certainly means Florida State will be number 4. I don't think a 7-point win over Miami is going to jump them into the top 3. They are number 4. So let's see if the top 3 changes, Tyler. Will the committee hold serve? They kind of have up to this point.
I would expect them to hold serve here.
I now do think that. Based on no changes, 4-8, I kind of think the top 3 is going to stay as well. Kind of think that's going to happen. So Florida State 4, Washington 5, Oregon 6, Michigan is 3, so chalk so far. Chalk so far. Let us know who should be number 1. Type OSU for Ohio State. Type UGA for Georgia.
And people wondered if the Penn State win would make a difference, and they hold serve.
It wasn't dominant enough. I think they would have had to win that game big to jump into the top 2. Let's see. Silver says Georgia. AKA says Georgia. Clip Clan going Ohio State. Braden, Dalton saying Georgia. Rocco says Ohio State. Hermes going Georgia. Braden, Georgia. iPont says Ohio State. Georgia better be number 1 from Synthetics. Joshua says Ohio State. So does Michael. Drum roll, please. Who is going to be number 1? Stick with us here. Timon says Ohio State. Gaming says Georgia. The committee's milking it. Oh! I was right about number 1. Ohio State is number 2. Georgia coming in at number 1. They flipped the one that I thought was less likely to be flipped. I thought 4 and 5 would be flipped. They were not. Georgia, back to where they've been, Tyler, the last 2.5 years.
Yeah, with the dominating win, they showed they haven't gone anywhere. They're still the 2-time defending champs. Yep. They've won 20-plus games in a row here. I don't hate it by the committee here to give Georgia that spot. I know the non-conference wasn't that great, but until somebody beats them, it's hard to say they're not the best team in the country.
And what's going to be interesting is you guys grade the committee's rankings for us, A, B, C, D, or F. What's going to be interesting, Tyler, is if you are Georgia, up to number 1 now, and I would expect them to probably hold there, unless when Ohio State beats Michigan, maybe they would. If that happens, they could reflip potentially. Sure. But if Georgia's number 1 going into the SEC championship game, can they absorb a close loss to Bama if there's chalk elsewhere? Like if there's not a lot of debate, or if there is some debate within the top 4, can they absorb a loss to Alabama and still get in? Because it's going to take a lot to go from number 1 to outside of the top 4.
Yeah, we have seen a certain team in 2014 fall from 3 out of the playoff when they won.
That did happen.
So it wouldn't be the first time we've seen some chaos from the committee, some inconsistency. But the resume test, strength of record, Ohio State with an edge over Georgia, 1st to 7th. Strength of schedule, Ohio State with an edge over Georgia, 39th to 78th. But the difference, what we've seen, the key wins that Mizzou win and the Mississippi State win back-to-back.
Ole Miss.
Or Ole Miss, yes, thank you. Big for Georgia here the last couple of weeks.
I think this is what the committee is telling me. The resume was too far in Ohio State's favor before last week, but adding that win over Ole Miss, even though the metrics favor Ohio State, I think the eye test has been in Georgia's favor. So with the resume close enough now, I think that's why you're seeing the flip now. They both have 2 ranked wins, and that's just where things sit right now. So Georgia at number 1. Want to quickly tell you about Prize Picks, daily fantasy made easy. You can pick 2 to 6 players on any given entry, college football, NBA, NFL. You can cross over sports, which I think is a lot of fun as well. All you do is pick their projections of more or less than what the Prize Picks projected stats are for any given player. Go click the link in the chat, get signed up. You can win up to 25 times your money on any given entry. PrizePicks.com/CLNS. Use our code CLNS to get a deposit match up to $100. Daily fantasy sports. No one does it better than Prize Picks. All right, White Boy Magic. If Liberty finishes undefeated, they deserve New Year's 6. Yeah, they're still not in the top 25, Tyler. So if Tulane wins out, I think they're going to get the nod. But if Tulane did drop a game, I think there's an opening for Liberty perhaps to represent the group of 5.
And how about Jamie Chadwell?
Yeah.
Goes from Coastal Carolina, did a really good job with that program, now doing the same at Liberty. I would be shocked if he's back with the Flames next year.
Yeah, I mean, with these jobs opening up, you got to think he's going to be in the mix for a Power 5 job. You know, there was chatter for years he would get one after what he did with Coastal. That did not work out, but you know, if he takes Liberty to an unbeaten season, I mean, that's a very strong resume. There's no doubt about it. Just kind of cycling through the rankings here. We'll kind of B-roll these on your screen here. Obviously, the big change tonight, Tyler, flipping Georgia and Ohio State. It's a bit of a moot point because, look, we've talked about it all night. We can flash the playoff map again as well. The 5 unbeaten teams control their destiny. Like, to me, there's just no scenario where any of these 4 teams or number 5 Washington wins out and doesn't get in. You're not leaving out an unbeaten Power 5 champion. It's just not going to happen. And the only scenario where it would happen is if all 5 were unbeaten, but that won't happen because Michigan and Ohio State obviously have to play each other in a few weeks.
Right. That still needs to play itself out. But, yeah, we got a long ways to go in this. I think the Pac-12 situation is interesting with that Oregon-Washington rematch coming up here soon.
How about Washington-Oregon State this weekend?
That too.
I mean, that's a real test for the Huskies. Like, you drop that. I'll say this. Washington not getting into that top 4 yet, I think they have to go undefeated. I don't think the committee likes them enough where, like, if they drop to Oregon State, for example, even if they won the Pac-12 title game, I think they would need help to get in. Like, I don't think that's a guarantee you're in the playoff. Like, I feel like the committee wants to rank Oregon ahead of Washington. But since they lost to them head-to-head and Washington's unbeaten, they can't do it. Like, they literally cannot.
And here's something to think about. Let's say that Oregon beats Washington. You could, in the Pac-12 title game, you could make a case that they erased their loss. Is there a world where a one-loss Oregon gets in over Florida State?
Unbeaten Florida State?
Unbeaten Florida State?
I can't see that. The committee's telling us they like Florida State, I think, but be interesting. Who do you guys think is the better team out of Florida State and Washington? I thought Washington would have been ranked higher tonight, but they are not. Now, you would think, Tyler, if they beat Oregon State this week, then they would for sure jump this week, or next week, but I thought that after a win over Utah, that would be the case. Clearly, I was wrong. John says Washington. Official Husky highlights says Washington. No surprise there. Zach says Washington. H. Avila says Florida State. Hulo says Washington. Zach says Washington. Timon going Florida State. Ducks are the best one-loss team. I think eye test wise, they do look like the best one-loss team. I think they are better than Washington, but you gotta value what happened on the field, and the committee has obviously done that here. Now you look at this weekend, Tyler. Which game to you feels the most significant? I do think it's that Pac-12 game, that late one there, Washington at Oregon State. I think that's the game to watch. I think that has the most playoff implications there.
I think so too, and we already saw Oregon State upset Utah earlier this year, so they've played spoiler before. I think also Georgia-Tennessee is going to be fascinating. Tennessee coming off a loss, looking to get back on track.
They've been much better at home, too.
They have.
Under Josh Heupel. Much better.
And a rivalry game, they're going to have a lot to play for. Watch out for Tennessee to potentially give Georgia a scare here.
We'll see. Last year, Georgia kind of eliminated Tennessee by beating them at home a year ago. Can Tennessee kind of repay the favor? We'll see. I don't see it with the Volunteers this year, but We'll see if they can bounce back. I don't see Ohio State getting tested at home by Minnesota. I think Arizona State could be a trap game for Oregon. Looking ahead to Oregon State in rivalry week, ASU's played a lot better recently. It's on the road. There's been some weird games in Tempe over the years. I would not be shocked by that one. ASU, Tyler, just beat UCLA, so they're playing some better football right now.
Yeah, they certainly are. Kenny Dillingham's done a good job with that. Let's go to some Super Chats here, starting with White Boy Magic. Penix Jr. and Bo Nix should be drafted before Caleb Williams.
I would not go.
I don't know about that.
I do think they're good prospects. They're also older. NFL evaluators, we know, Tyler, would rather have the 21, 22-year-old that can develop and have a longer career than
There's
Penix
only one
and Nix.
potential quarterback that could pass up Caleb Williams, and that's Drake May.
And Dane Brugler, the draft analyst for The Athletic, has Drake May over Caleb Williams. That'll be fascinating to watch. Hermes Cortez with the $1 super chat as well. We appreciate you supporting the cause here at Chat Sports. Let's cycle through the rankings real quick, and then we'll see where that leaves us. Georgia at number 1, Ohio State 2, as the committee does flip the top 2. Michigan holds at 3. Florida State, Washington, Oregon hold there at 4 through 6. 3 through 8, Tyler, no changes there. The committee's still valuing the head-to-head with Texas and Bama, but you do wonder, as we approach Championship Saturday, if Texas and Bama win out, I think that Bama, if they beat Georgia, would leapfrog Texas, who would play either OU, Oklahoma State, Kansas State. I just don't think whoever Texas plays in the title game is going to stack up to Bama potentially beating Georgia. Even though they'd have the head-to-head over Bama, I do think the committee, if it came down to that, would make that leapfrog.
Counterpoint, though, if Oklahoma gets into the Big 12 championship game and Texas beats them, then
they will have beaten
you've
everybody
erased
on the
your one loss from earlier in the year.
Which is probably what you want if you're Texas. Like, you probably want to have that chance to beat the team, the only team you lost to, because I think that's a meaningful point on the resume. Missouri at number 9, Louisville at number 10. Not great for the Cardinals to be behind a 2-loss team. I think their path just got that much tougher as the lowest-ranked 1-loss team. Oregon State, again, hosting Washington on Saturday. I think that's the game of the week in college football. Penn State, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, LSU, those teams, Tyler, kind of jockeying for New Year's Six positioning. We'll see how those teams do the rest of the way. OU obviously still in the mix to make the Big 12 championship game. Iowa at number 16. Arizona at 17. They've been a great story this year. Tennessee gets their shot against Georgia this week, so we'll keep tabs on that game, of course. Notre Dame and North Carolina wrapping up the top 20. There is an outside scenario where North Carolina makes the ACC championship game, but it's pretty grim at this point. Kansas State at 21, Oklahoma State at 23 there. Those teams still in the Big 12 title hunt. Tulane, the only Group of 5 team in the top 25, which is kind of wild to think about. One G5 team ranked. I mean, 10-0 Liberty can't be number 25. That's I know your boys are number 25.
Yeah, number 25.
I'm surprised they dropped that far. I know Tech's not great, but it was a 3-point loss to the third-string quarterback.
Yeah, with a quarterback injury and everything there. Yeah. 25, a bit harsh from the committee, but
top 25 matchup this week for the. When did that happen last? It's 1995.
I was not born.
The last time Kansas and Kansas State were both ranked when they played each other. So,
and now
is it in Lawrence this year?
It is in Lawrence.
In Lawrence.
Primetime game Saturday night. Will I make it home before tip-off to see the number 1 ranked team in the country?
Are you You're not going up to Lawrence for the game this
I'll watch it on my TV.
No? Okay. All right, one more from Magic. Does Louisville have a legit path to the playoff? We've got them. We'll wrap up with this, with our college football playoff map, and then we'll wrap it here. I'll still think there is a chance, but the fact that they're ranked behind a 2-loss team probably doesn't bode well. That tells us the committee likes them, but doesn't view them as a real threat right now. They need a lot of chaos.
They might need to beat the crap out of Florida State in an ACC championship game.
Yeah. They need Georgia to eliminate Bama. They need Washington to beat Oregon. You can't have a second 1-loss team lurking in a conference. They need Texas to lose. I think that for sure has to happen as well. If all that happens, maybe there's a shot, but it's not looking great for Louisville, but been a great season for them nonetheless.
And real quick, the committee is a little down on Notre Dame because of Ohio State dropping and Louisville staying at 10. Those non-conference wins for those two don't look so great as
they
much
matter
as they
a
were
little
last
less,
week.
at least per the committee. All right, guys. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Join us next week. Hit that sub button here on the channel. Share the link with a friend. It's youtube.com/chatsportstv. He's Tyler Jones. I'm Harrison Graham. Appreciate Brett Scott for producing. Georgia, #1, Ohio State 2, Michigan 3, Florida State 4. That is the top 4 this week. More college football coverage throughout the week, and then we'll be back next Tuesday night for the latest edition of the CFP Top 25 Rankings.